Hello and welcome back. This is another sixth grade math video. This time we're going to be focusing on dividing by decimals. Okay, here is our first one that we're going to be doing together. We're going to be taking 8,497.1 and dividing it by 0.2. Okay, so the key to this is in the setup because we don't actually want to divide by a decimal. So I will show you what I mean. We're going to take that first number, which is the 8,497.1, and we're going to put that inside of the division bracket, and the 0.2 will go on the outside. Okay, so now, like I said, we don't want to divide by a decimal. What we want to do is divide by a whole number because it's easier. So we're going to be doing some shuffling of decimals to make that happen. What we're going to do is we're going to move this decimal for the 0.2 over one space over here so that we're dividing by 2, which is a whole number instead of 0.2. But whatever we do on the outside to make it equivalent, we have to do on the inside. So that means since I moved the decimal one space to the right on the outside, I have to do that on the inside as well. So I have to take this decimal and move it one space to the right also to make it match. Then I can go ahead and put it up into my answer space before I start dividing, just like I did when we were dividing decimals by whole numbers. So now that we've moved everything around and we're going to be dividing by a whole number, I can start eliminating some things that may be a little messy that might get in my way. So for example, I can get rid of this 0 because we don't need that. I can get rid of these markings here. And I can also get rid of these markings here, including the decimal there, because I've already moved it. So essentially, I'm going to be taking 84,971 and dividing it by 2 instead. And I will get the same answer as I would have if I had done that just with the straight decimals. So 2 goes into 8 4 times, which is going to be 8. And when I subtract that, I get 0 left over. I'm going to bring that down. And 2 goes into 4 2 times. So that's going to be exactly 4 when I subtract it, 0 left over. Bring down the 9. 2 goes into 9 4 times. So that's going to give me 8. Then I'm going to subtract that and get 1 left over. Then I'm going to bring down the 7. And 2 goes into 17, I want to say 8 times. So that would be 16. When I subtract that, I have 1 left over. So I'm going to bring down this 1. 2 goes into 11 5 times. So that's 10 with 1 left over. Okay, I kind of ran out of space, and like we talked about before, when you're dividing with decimals, you can't have a remainder. So I can't say that this is 42,485 remainder 1. I have to keep going. And the way that I can keep going is to add a 0 to my remainder. So really, I'm going to be trying to divide 2 into 10, which goes in exactly 5 times. So since 10 minus 10 is 0, now I am finished because there are no more numbers to bring down and I have no remainder left over. So my final answer here would be 42,485.5. Okay, here is our next one. We're going to take 1,582 and divide it by 0.8. So again, that first number goes inside 1,582 divided by 0.8. Okay, so again, I don't want to divide by a decimal. It's just too difficult. So I want to move that decimal over so that I'm dividing by a whole number of 8 instead of 0.8. But you may have noticed that the first number is a whole number. It doesn't have a decimal. Well, in reality, it actually does. It's just we don't usually write it when we're dealing with whole numbers. The decimal is always present after the ones place, even if we don't write it. So I'm going to go ahead and rewrite it or make it reappear so I have something to move when I'm moving my outside decimal. The outside decimal gets moved once to make that 8 instead of 0.8. So I have to move the inside decimal the same amount of time. So I'm going to move it to the right once. Now you may have noticed, well, there's nothing there. I created a space. So in that space I created, I'm going to put a 0 and I'm going to extend my bracket for the answer. Okay, so now I'm going to put the decimal for the answer up into the answer space right above where I moved it in the problem. So again, we have a lot of shuffling going on. And once we're done shuffling, we can get rid of some markings if we find them confusing. We can get rid of the 0, the decimal, the line, the 0, the decimal, or the line, the decimal, and kind of make it look like this. So it looks a little more comfortable to what we're used to dividing. So 8 does not fit into 1. So I'm going to put a 0 up there and mark that. But 8 does fit into 15 once. So I'm going to, 1 times 8 is 8. And then I'd have 7 left over. I'm going to bring down the 8. 8 would fit into 78 9 times because that gives us 72. And when we subtract it, we would have 6 left over. I'm then going to bring down the 2. And 8 would go into 62 7 times. 8 times 7 is 56. When I subtract that, I should get 6 left over. You have to do some regrouping there, but you should end up with 6 left over. Then I'm going to bring down the 0, and 8 would go into 60 again 7 times, which gives me 56. When I subtract that, I get 4 left over. So now, although there are no more numbers to bring down, we do have to keep going because we can't have a remainder when we're dividing with decimals. So instead of calling this remainder, I'm going to add a 0 to the remainder and keep dividing. 8 fits into 40 exactly 5 times. So that means when I subtract the 40, I end up with 0. So now that I have no remainder and no more numbers to bring down, I know that I'm finished with the problem. The answer here would be 1977.5. Okay, here is our next one. This one is going to be taking 5,157 and dividing it by 3.6. So I'm going to go ahead and take that first number and write it in here, 5,157, and dividing it by 3.6. Okay, so again, we're dividing by a decimal. So I know I'm going to need to move that decimal to make it a whole number. And then my inside number doesn't have a decimal. So I'm going to rewrite the decimal that would be there after the ones place. So I have something to move. Now I need to move this decimal over 1 space to make it 36 instead of 3.6. And I need to move the inside decimal over 1 space to make it match. If I have an empty space, I fill that in with a 0. And then I put my decimal up into my answer space before I start dividing. So before I start dividing, I can get rid of the decimal in the line here, and that makes it a little bit easier visually. 36 does not fit into 5, so that's going to get a 0. It does fit into 51 1 time, so that's going to be 36 down here. And when I subtract 51 minus 36, I have to do a little regrouping, but I should end up with 15. Then I'm going to bring down the 5. Okay, so now I have to figure out how many times 36 fits into 155. So I'm going to try, since I know 36 rounds up to 40, and I think 40 would fit into 150 maybe about 3 times. I'm going to start with 36 times 3 and see where that gets me. That would be 6 times 3 would be 18. And then 3 times 3 plus 1 would be 10, 108. So I could probably go one more time. Let's try 36 times 4 and see what that does. 6 times 4 is 24. And 3 times 4 is 12 plus 2 is 144. Yeah, that's probably as close as I'm going to get to 155. So I'm going to put a 4 up here. I'm going to put the 144 here. And when I subtract that, I get 11. Bring down the 7. So this is where keeping the numbers that I've already tried next to my problem comes in handy, because now I can look at it and be like, well, this time I'm trying to get 117. So I know times 4 is too much because that's 144, but times 3 should work out nicely because that's 108, and I don't have to remultiply that. So I'm going to put a 3 up here, and then I'm going to put the 108 down here. Then when I subtract that, I should end up with 9 left over. Okay, so I'm going to bring down this 0, and now I got to figure out how many times 36 fits into 90. Well, I know it's going to be less than 3 because 36 times 3 was 108. So let's try 36 times 2. So that would be 12, and that would be 6 plus 1, which is 7. Okay, that works out pretty good. So I'm going to put a 2 up here, and then 72 here. Now I will have to do some regrouping to subtract that, but when I do, I should end up with 18, fitting it down there. Okay, so again, we can't get any remainder, so I'm going to have to add a 0 to the remainder and keep going. Now I need to figure out how many times 36 fits into 180. So I'm going to erase some of this just to make some room. I know I'm going to have to go possibly bigger than 4 because 36 times 4 is 144. I think I could go a little bit bigger, so let's try 5. 6 times 5 is 30. And then 3 times 5 is 15 plus 3 is 18. Oh, that's perfect. That's exactly what I'm looking for. So I'm going to put the 5 up here. I'm going to put the 180 here to be subtracted. And when I subtract it, I get 0 left over. So since I have nothing left over and no more numbers to bring down, my answer is 1,432.5. Okay, here is our next one. We're going to take 65 and divide it by 0.8. So again, 65 goes inside, 0.8 goes on the outside. And then I'm going to have to add a decimal to the 65 since I know that I'm going to need to do some shuffling. So I'm going to go ahead and rewrite it where it would be right there after the 65. Because remember, decimals are always after the ones place. Okay, so on the outside, I'm going to move this decimal over here so that I'm dividing by 8 instead of 0.8. And I have to move the inside decimal over one space to make it match. That creates an empty space that I can fill in with a 0, extend my answer space, and then put the decimal up into the answer space before I begin. So now that my setup's complete, I can get rid of the 0, the decimal, and the decimal and the line here, and this is what I'm left with. So 8 does not fit into 6. I'm going to go put a 0 up there to mark that. 8 does fit into 65 8 times because that would give us 64. When I subtract that, I get 1 left over. Bring down the number or the 0 and put it next to the 1, giving me 10. 8 would fit into 10 one time. So I'm going to subtract 8 from 10 and I get 2 left over. So remember, again, we can't have remainders when we're dividing with decimals. So that means I need to add a 0 to the remainder and keep going. So instead of 2, I'm going to add a 0 to make it 20. And 8 would fit into 20 2 times, giving me 16. And when I subtract that, I get 4 left over. Okay, so even though I still don't have any numbers to bring down, I still have a remainder. So I'm going to have to add a 0 and keep going. 8 fits into 40 5 times, which is exactly 40. So I have 0 left over. So now I'm finished because there's no more numbers to bring down and I don't have any remainders. My final answer for this one would be 81.25. Okay, here is our last one that we're going to do today. We're going to take 639 and divide it by 1.25. So 639 would go inside the division bracket because it's the first number. Oops, that autocorrected weird. And then divide it by 1.25 on the outside. Okay, now I wanted to do this one in particular because for this one, we need to move that decimal 2 spaces to make it a whole number, which means I need to move it the same amount of spaces inside to match. Before I do that, I'm going to add a decimal after the ones place because that's the starting point for that decimal. So like we talked about, we're going to have to move this 2 places to make it 125, which means I need to move this 2 places. Then I'm going to extend my answer space and fill in the empty spaces with zeros, then put my decimal up into the answer space before I begin. Okay, so now that I'm done with my setup, I can get rid of the decimal in the lines here, the decimal and the lines here, and go ahead and start dividing. So 125 does not fit into 6 or 63, but it will fit into 639. We just don't know how many times. So let's go over here and go 125 times something to get 639. Well, I think it's going to be maybe 5 or 6 times. So I'm going to start with 5. 5 times 5 is 25. 2 times 5 is 10 plus 2 is 12. And then 1 times 5 is 5 plus 1 is 6. So that's pretty darn close, 625. So I'm going to go ahead and put a 5 up here, 625 here. When I subtract that, I should get 4 here and 1 here. So I've got 14 left over. Now I need to bring down this 0. Well, 125 is going to fit into 140 probably once. So I'm going to go and put a 1 up here, a 125 here. And then when I subtract those, I'm going to have to do a little regrouping. But when I do, I should end up with 15. Then I'm going to bring down this 0. And again, 125 would probably fit into 151. So I'm going to put a 1 here. That's 125 here. And I subtract that with a little regrouping, I should end up with 25. Okay, so now I can't have a remainder, as we've talked about. So I have to add a 0 to the remainder and keep going. So 125 fitting into 250. I'm thinking that's going to be twice, but let's double check just to see. I can erase that and do 2 here. 2 times 5 is 10. 2 times 2 is 4, plus 1 is 5. And 1 times 2 is 2. Yep, it's exactly 250. So that 2 goes up here. The 250 goes down here. When I subtract it, 0 left over. So no more numbers to bring down and no remainder. My answer to this one would be 511.2. All right, well, thank you so much for joining me today. I hope to see you in a future video.